This week's episode of I Was a Teenage Film Snob is not brought to you by popcorn. Welcome to I Was a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, your friendly neighborhood film snob. Oh, stuffed that intro up. That's no good. It's because I'm so nervously excited about our guest this week. He hasn't been on in quite a while, and we've been trying to get it together, but the last couple of weeks have been a nightmare for both of us. Please welcome back the show's most eligible bachelor, Nick Owen.
James, thanks for having me back on the podcast. And yes, I must apologise because I think I've had to cancel on this pod maybe 3 or 4 times through health.
We both had to cancel through sickness and health.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know why I went with the eligible bachelor line because I had two. It was that one, or I was going to talk about how you're my soulmate, and I ended up going both very romantic.
Yeah. Well, next time.
Yeah,
I do often refer to you as my comedic soulmate. I think that you and I have the sense of humour that I don't think many people get. So.
And I would say, like, that passion for film. Like, I know this is a film podcast, and everyone I speak to has some level of passion for film, but the conversations you and I have about movies are very different to the ones I have with everyone else, in as much as we will just talk forever. Like, literally, like, I always block out a minimum 3 hours for our episodes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You got to find your tribe, and when you do, you just got to go for the ride. I think. Find your tribe, go for the ride.
That's the catchphrase.
Yeah, that's it.
For those playing along at home, I think last time on the show we were like, "Oh, I'll watch Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and you'll watch Clerks." I don't know about you, but I have not watched Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
No, I have not followed through on that promise.
And like you really should have, because my film is way shorter than your film, but that's okay.
Yeah, Clerks is a neat. Is it even 90 minutes?
I think it's like it'd be 100 at most. It's not a long film.
Yeah.
But it could be a slog for you because you haven't seen it before, and it's very much an independent film. But that's okay.
Maybe I'll do it piecemeal. I'll break it into like little snackable 30 or 40-minute chunks.
It's 90 minutes, and there's like 5 minutes of credits, so it's a short watch. Yeah. But I remember I showed it to someone once who we used to work with, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! Like, if you like comedy, you'll love this." And the next day, he handed it back. He goes, "I see the appeal, but not for me." And I was like, "We don't need to talk about movies ever again."
Yeah. Do you know, it just brings like, it is fraught with danger when you recommend. Like, I do pride myself on being that guy that if I do ever recommend something, I try not to be like 10 minutes later, "Well, what'd you think? It was good, wasn't it?"
Yeah.
But it is fraught with danger because you put yourself out there when you recommend a film or a song or an album or something like that. And if people are just like, it was okay, I think it can be a real blow, can't it?
Yeah, I don't think I feel that way anymore, though. Like, I remember in the old days, like, people were like, "Oh, what's the movie that you would you have to test your new partner on, like, and if they don't like it, then you can't be together." I was like, gee, what a fickle way to...
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a bit extreme.
Yeah, but like, I know people have done that, and I might have had that in the past, but I never really tested Tina on movies. I was just like, "Hey, you don't like it, I'll watch it by myself." Like, joke's on you. Like, yeah. I can just chill out, watch a movie I love, and you can go do something else. See ya. But yeah, it is a weird litmus test. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what you think when you finally do watch it. But I won't be offended if you don't like it.
Yeah.
How have you been? I know you've been unwell. You mentioned that. But since our last rendezvous on the show,
I'd been dodging COVID like Keanu in the Matrix. I'm lucky enough that I live fairly close to my work, so I walk a lot of the time. But I continued to catch public transport when I needed to, and continued on at the gym, which is obviously like a super spreading environment. Just people who are breathing heavily.
That's why I stopped going to the gym. So let's chalk it up to that.
And I thought I was doing quite well, but yeah, just like a couple of weeks back, I was just starting to feel a bit rough and no energy, and I had a few of those rat tests laying around, and took one, and I was shocked. It was was positive. So I obviously did the right thing and isolated for 7 days, which living in a small apartment is, I felt like it was a real Shutter Island kind of vibes in here after that. I was ready to start burning everything to the ground.
It took 12 years, but I finally get that reference. So,
Yeah.
so I watched it when I was sick this year. I watched Shutter Island. So
Yeah. It's something Latus. That's his name, isn't it? I felt like Andrew Latus. That's who I felt like.
You might be right. You would think I would remember, but it was a couple of movies ago for me now.
Yeah. But no, apart from that, just busy with work and getting busy. If you don't get busy living, you get busy dying. That's the Shawshank Redemption saying. So yeah, no. Apart from that, nothing much.
Well, it's good to have you back, and good to hear you're on the mend and feeling better. Because I've been lucky enough to dodge it, keeping my Keanu moves intact. But it's only a matter of time. Look, I'm shocked I haven't had it yet. So I'm probably due on the chopping block soon for the old COVID, but we'll try to keep dodging as long as possible.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the variant that's still in the rounds of Melbourne at the moment is fairly mild. So,
okay, I'll be back in a second. I'll just run out and pick it.
So it wasn't pleasant, but you'll be fine if you do get it.
Yeah, no, nice one. Good to hear you feeling better. Now we're going to continue our trip back in time. We've been talking about the 80s, and I know I was most excited to get you on, not because everyone else's lists are not good, but because when I messaged you, you were like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. Like, we've been preparing my entire life to talk about 80s films. So we're definitely getting into that. But I know you had some questions or you had some topics you wanted to discuss beforehand, which I love about you on the show, Nick. You always bring things to talk about. You mentioned you watched Doctor Strange. How did you find that? We didn't really talk about it other than you were like, what happens next?
Yeah. And I do feel for you because you are like my encyclopedia Marvel. So I'm just like, James, explain this to me. I really enjoyed it. I had I'd read enough, both good and bad kind of reviews. I mean, or just you see here, good and bad things that I sort of just lowered my expectations. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Like, it just felt like a Raimi film. It felt like a real departure from the kind of stuff Marvel had been serving up for the past 3 or 4 years before that, I think. Which
it's definitely the darkest and most violent of the MCU films, and probably the scariest as well. And that's not to say it's a horror film. Like, the horror stuff's pretty cheesy, but there are a couple of jump scares in there.
And I really appreciate. Now, I don't know if this is, I know everything's written and then rewritten, but it really felt like Sam Raimi was subverting a very new trope, which is the Marvel film. It's like, who can we introduce, or who can we kind of like surprise the audience with? And I felt like he already took that trope and turned it on its head. Spoiler alert here, with the introduction of all those characters in the in the alternate universe, and then 5 minutes later they're all suffering horrific deaths.
Yeah, it was great. The Illuminati. I knew that the Illuminati was showing up in the film, and I think in the trailer they'd given away a good percentage of them. I think we definitely knew Charles Xavier was coming back. Like, his voiceover is in one of the trailers. We're pretty certain Captain Marvel was coming in. We're pretty certain that Captain Carter was coming in. That was a really great subversive take as well, which is like, I can do this all day, and then gets cut in half. And there was someone else in that group. Oh, and Mordo we knew. But the two big surprises, and again, spoilers, but the film's been out on streaming for a couple of weeks now, was Black Bolt. I was probably more surprised by Black Bolt, to be honest, because I just wasn't expecting that at all. And it's the same actor from The Inhumans, which was the much reviled TV show, which I haven't seen, but I like that actor. So that was cool. And then, of course, John Krasinski as Reed Richards, which I was kind of expecting. It felt like there's a lot of... It was kind of like the worst kept secret in Hollywood. Like, it kind of felt like he was definitely going to be in it. But it was cool to see him. It was cool to see a Fantastic Four member finally.
It definitely was. And I was a bit shocked when he just suffered a pretty horrific death 5 minutes after the introduction. But presumably, now that the multiverse is well and truly cracked open, we'll be seeing those people reprise those roles fairly soon, you'd think?
It'll be interesting to see whether those actors come back or not. Like, they are making a Fantastic Four film. They announced it last week at Comic-Con. or the week before, sorry. But there's a lot of people saying, look, Krasinski was kind of just a fan service one and done. Like they want to see what it looked like, but there's no guarantee he'll be in that film. So I don't know. But that being said, Secret Wars has been announced, and Secret Wars is pretty much like a think of like the end of Endgame. Take that and multiply it by the multiverse, and that's kind of what you can get. Like different versions of different characters from different universes fighting each other. So
yeah, okay.
So it's possible we'll see them again. And I think I read something online just today where they're like, no one who hasn't appeared in a Marvel film will not be appearing in Secret Wars. So there's a lot of double negatives in there, but basically like, look, if they haven't debuted in a film before Secret Wars, they're not going to show up as a surprise in Secret Wars, which I like. I think that's good, actually. Like, I don't need, like, I remember, like, I was talking to, I'll tell you a story. And I don't tell it very often anymore because whenever I tell it, Tina's like, Jesus Christ, let it go. I was in like a cafe in 2018, I think. It was either 2018 or 2019, before Endgame came out. And I was talking to the barista. We were just ordering things, and he saw my Marvel shirt. And he goes, Deadpool was seen on the set of Endgame. I was like, no, he wasn't. He's like, no, he was. He's definitely going to be in it. I was like, he wasn't. I've seen the photo as well. It's not from that. It's from Deadpool 2 or whatever. He goes, no, he's definitely going to be. He's like, and I was like, okay, it's fine. He's like, hey, we'll see. We'll see when Endgame comes out. Like, challenge me. And I remember I was sitting in the theaters. I got to the end of Endgame, and I loved it. And I took a moment. I was like, I need to get back to that cafe and tell that guy that he was wrong. I didn't need Deadpool in Endgame. If he hadn't showed up in the film, it wouldn't have made sense. So I guess that's the point I'm making. I don't need new characters to show up in the climactic resolution of a storyline.
So how far along the path are we to the Secret Wars? So, I mean, I'm thinking of the Infinity Saga as a kind of as a guide here, but it feels like we're still in the very first phase of this saga. So when they announce, so I mean, the first kind of glimpse and chatter about Thanos was probably 10 years before he appeared, in person. Sorry,
yeah.
But are we talking about a roadmap that's going to be 10 years in the making, or are we talking about?
No, it won't be that long. So I got two thoughts on this. The first is I've been seeing a lot of people online criticizing Phase 4 quite a bit. I think Phase 4 is great. I really like every movie in Phase 4. I like Black Widow. I like Shang-Chi. I think Shang-Chi is brilliant. It would have been my favorite of the phase if they hadn't then gone and done Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange, which are excellent as well. And I really like Eternals. I didn't like I didn't love the first time I saw it. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The rewatch, I thought it was fantastic. I've all turned around. But everyone's like, oh, Phase 4 is so slow. We have no idea where we're going. People have forgotten how simple it used to be. The first phase, like they were like, maybe we'll do an Avengers film. It took them 5 years to get to the first Avengers film, and Thanos was teased for 2 seconds. We then didn't see Thanos again until Guardians of the Galaxy, which was 2 years later for a couple of minutes, and then he showed up for 5 seconds at the end of Age of Ultron. And then we didn't see Thanos at all until 2018, like in a film. Like we didn't see much of him. It took Endgame is in 2019, and Iron Man's in 2008. It took 11 years to tell that story. Like they took their time. Like it wasn't rushed. They weren't like people were like, we saw Infinity Stones in Phase 1. No, we didn't. Like we got the Tesseract. We didn't know it was an Infinity Stone until much later. And we got Loki's scepter, but again, we didn't know it was an Infinity Stone until much later. This year we got Kang for like 10 minutes in season 1 of Loki. And he's probably got more screen time than Thanos did in the first 2 phases.
Yeah, and which brings me to, I mean, the Infinity Saga was just so flawless for the most part, and I guess went out on such a high. But do you think
I would agree with flawless? I don't have a problem with any film in that saga. I know other people. I mean, I know that like I guess maybe a lot more forgiving, but I don't have a problem with any film in that saga. I'll watch any one of them any day of the week.
Mm-hmm. But like, do you feel like that there's any run of films that could have survived in the backlash of, or in the after glow of Infinity War and Endgame? It's just like, and I guess to add to that is you've got a direct comparison. You're coming down from the high of Endgame, but also like it really wasn't apparent, well, to me anyway, what the direction was, and so therefore you're kind of like, are they just releasing films to just make money at this point. So now that there's a bit of a roadmap and you can see that something's building again, I'm back. I'm back on board.
I think there has been a pretty clear storyline that people are missing. And first of all, to answer your other question about how long is this going to take, everything will be wrapped up by then 2025. So phase 3, 4, 5, and 6 can take about 4 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they're releasing things simultaneously on Disney Plus and in the theaters. And what Kevin Feige said over the last couple of weeks was, we don't need to spend 5 years building to Avengers anymore. Like we've got everything so set in place. People understand how we work. We can tell lots of stories in a short period of time. So we don't need to have an Avengers film at the end of each phase. We can just culminate everything with an event of 2 Avengers films, which again, I kind of like. I agree with him. Like, let's introduce all the storylines and then build up to your big double feature at the end. In terms of the roadmap, what I've seen from day one is they're building the Young Avengers. Like, that's what they've been doing so far. Like, Black Widow introduced the new Black Widow. Shang-Chi is not a Young Avenger, but he's going to be part of the new team of Avengers. Hawkeye introduced the new Hawkeye. WandaVision introduced Wanda's kids. Now, they're not real in this universe, but we do have a multiverse we can go. We've got White Vision, who's going to be in a different team at some point. I'm trying to think of all the shows that we've had in all the movies. We've got Kid Loki. Kid Loki could show up in Young Avengers as well. We've got 2 different Lokis, a girl Loki and a boy Loki. They can do things multiversally. Doctor Strange introduced America Chavez. She's part of the Young Avengers. Spider-Man No Way Home gave us a lot of exciting places to go. Spider-Man is now going to be a street-level hero, so he's not going to be fighting big alien invasions anymore. And there's rumors he's going to have a team up with Daredevil, which they've done.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a big tick for me.
Yeah, they've done it in the comics tons because he is more of a street-level hero. Obviously, the big news of Charlie Cox coming back, getting an 18-episode series, I'm very excited about. But also, he's in the trailer for She-Hulk. She-Hulk, another character who will be in some form of Avengers team. So they've been building up to it. The only one maybe that feels a bit out of place is Eternals, because Eternals is on a much larger scale. But I've been seeing things online where people are like, we've had 3 films since the Eternals and no one's addressed the Celestial. It's like, it's okay. We'll get to it.
Yeah, but I almost feel like the Eternals is like more just like building lore, LORE is what I mean there. Like, it just sort of like, for me, it kind of sets up the framework for the scope of the next phase,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So there has been a pretty clear roadmap, I think, where like they're introducing secondary characters are going to be part of the new team. Like, we've got 2 Avengers films, but we don't really have many Avengers at the moment because Cap's gone, Iron Man's gone, Black Widow's gone. And so we've got half that team missing because they're either dead or they've retired. So we need to get some new Avengers before we can then have an Avengers film. So that's what they've been doing. They're building up a new roster. That's what they're doing. And now Multiverse obviously is going to give us variants and all sorts of kind of cross-realm battles and all that sort of thing. I've been meaning to tell you, actually, I'm going to stray off just for a second. I was watching the Kevin Feige presentation last week. Some guy was sitting in Hall H at Comic-Con who's filming it. And when they announced 2 Avengers films, the guy filming just goes, "The Avengers are back!" and like in the most triumphant shout. And now that's my catchphrase whenever something good happens. Like whenever Tina's like, "Oh, we're having roast time," like, "The Avengers are back!" I was like, they never went anywhere. Like, they've always, like, what, do you think we weren't going to get another Avengers film? Like, you're crazy.
That's to quote Michael Scott when he goes, "Nerd."
Yeah.
To Dwight. I can't remember what the context is in The Office when he says that, but
we also have way more announcements coming. Like, they announced a ton of stuff. A lot of things they announced over the last week we knew, or at least I think if you're looking for it, you kind of knew. Like, the Daredevil announcement wasn't a surprise. The fact that it's 18 episodes is a surprise, but we didn't know. We did know Daredevil's coming back. We knew there was an Echo show. We knew there was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Like, we knew a lot of these things. Captain America as well. There's a new Captain America film coming, and they introduced the young Captain America in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they've been doing a lot of world building and rostering up. So we knew a lot of things coming, but now we have an idea of how long it's all going to take. And the next big presentation is in September, I think, when Disney has their big expo, the D23 expo. And Kevin Feige has said, yeah, we've got a panel. We're going to be announcing more stuff then. And then in December, Disney have their big Investors Day, and they normally announce a couple of things as well. So we're going to learn a lot more about what's happening in the next few years, in the next couple of months.
Well, I'm pretty sure that as well as Marvel stuff, they announced like 4 billion Star Wars TV shows. So
yeah,
it's definitely going to be like a Marvel and Star Wars heavy couple of years coming up.
There'll be more Star Wars. There's Indiana Jones 5, which is shooting at the moment, directed by the guy who did Logan. So I'm actually quite interested in that.
Spielberg's not doing it.
No, James Mangold's doing it instead. But yeah, it's fine. Look, I trust.
Yeah, I mean,
I trust that director. I think Mangold's great, and Disney, still getting more hits than misses as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I say that. I mean, like, I didn't particularly enjoy the last Indiana Jones film. So, and I think Spielberg did that. So maybe time to hand the baton over. But when is Harrison Ford going to just like say enough is enough? He must be pushing 80 now.
Well, remember, he's been trying to quit Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back, and he's come back like 4 or 5 times. So we'll probably keep getting him until he can't do them anymore. So
yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of exciting Marvel stuff. I was, I try not to get too disappointed, but I was disappointed by Warner Brothers' presentation this year. They showed us 2 trailers. One was for Black Adam, which we've already seen a trailer for, and this trailer was shorter and had pretty much all the same footage. And then the Shazam trailer, which I did like. I like the Shazam trailer, but I was like, oh, well, there's a Flash movie coming out. You don't want to show us any of that? There's an Aquaman movie. You don't want to show us any of that? And granted, those 2 films are fraught with controversy because they've got Amber Heard and Ezra Miller in them, who have been all over the headlines over the last couple of months.
Yeah. But I feel like that's a whole nother episode we could do, is the state of the DC universe. You'll know my thoughts on it. I'm sure probably, I can't remember if we've covered it previously. I'm sure we have actually when we did the top 5 Batman.
Well, there was one exciting development which happened after Comic-Con, but Jason Momoa posted the other day that Ben Affleck's in Aquaman.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
As Batman. So I was like, oh, we didn't want to announce that at the convention. That would have got people really hyped for your universe. Okay. Apparently he's back as Batman. So that's cool. I'll take that.
Yeah.
No, slouch to Pattinson. I loved him as Batman as well, but if we get one more Affleck, I'll take it.
Yeah. But that felt really contained, and I know a sequel got announced, but it doesn't feel like that's a Batman that's going to tie into the DC universe. So, and what else did I have? One more. I'll give you one more micro review. I recently checked out the new Netflix movie by the Russo brothers, The Grey Man, which stars Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. Not bad, but like a lot of those Netflix films, like Red Notice, and I know it's not Netflix, it's a Disney film, but Free Guy as well. I was entertained while I was watching it, but I literally didn't think about it after it finished. It felt really disposable, and I thought that the Russo brothers would be a step above that. I mean, it looks gorgeous, as you would expect, and Gosling's always good, and Chris Evans is so funny. I mean, you can tell he's just loving basically just like stampeding all over the Captain America kind of like caricature he's sort of like known for. So it's really funny. But yeah, it just felt really, as soon as it finished, I was like, yeah, that was okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen Red Notice yet, but I have seen Free Guy. I watched that when I was recovering from my COVID vax symptoms. Because I was like, well, I'm sick, so I might as well watch this now, because if it's not good, then at least I can blame it on being sick. And it was fine. I agree. I think it was totally watchable, but I haven't given it many thoughts since I watched it.
Yeah. So, Graham, I would recommend checking it out. It was really good for just like to put on like, I think it was like a Sunday night. I wanted something relaxing before kind of like work the following day, and it did the job. But yeah, I don't know. Is everything okay?
I'll definitely get to it. I'm trying to catch up on my 2022 films, because this year it's been tough to watch stuff, just because like with Zoe getting older and things like that, it's been hard to watch things on the reg, and it's very rare that I can watch a film in one sitting. I often have to watch it in parts now, which is quite frustrating. So I've been trying to burn through as many 2022 releases as possible. I just ordered a bunch. I've got more on their way just so I can start catching up. Like Scream came out in January. I'm still waiting for the Blu-ray to arrive so I can watch that. That new Nick Cage film, what is it?
Is that the one where he plays himself?
Yeah, like I've got that. I'll be ordering that one next week. So I've got a few on the way so I can catch up. The Northman, I've just got Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've just got as well. And I just watched the Bob's Burgers movie, which I really loved. So I'm working my way through them. So I haven't even thought about like Netflix releases yet. I'm still trying to get those theatrical ones done.
Yeah.
Nice one. Well, let's talk about the 80s. Now you said you had a bit of a question about the 80s, but I'll open up with my one, and then we'll go from there. I've been asking everyone the same thing. What does the 80s mean to you? Obviously, you were born after I was, but just by a little bit. You're 89, if I remember correctly.
That's right, yep.
So weren't really living through the 80s all that much, just like myself. Does that have any significance to you, or is it just kind of like, I'm aware of it, but it doesn't really mean anything?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think even though, I mean, yeah, technically it was born mid-89, so I can't say, experienced much of the 80s. But I think that we grew up in a time when movies weren't quite as sort of disposable, and there just weren't as many, is the other thing. And so by the time I was old enough to start, watching movies and appreciating movies, it was probably like mid to late 90s, but you still had the VHS tapes, that you recorded off TV, and a lot of those were 80s films, I'm sure some films that'll appear in my list and would appear in like some of my favorite films lists are movies that we just had on VHS from the time I can remember through to when you didn't have tapes anymore. And so the 80s films are really what I grew up on and what really got me into films. And I think now that I'm a little bit older and you can kind of understand where it all sits in the history of film, it's really, when I think of 80s films, I think of like the rise of the blockbuster. And I think if you go back to 60s and 70s cinema and you think of what the equivalent of like a blockbuster, an action blockbuster is quite often these dour police dramas like a Dirty Harry or a Western or like a Bullet, those kinds of things that are really grounded in reality and quite violent.
Well, I think the only exception you would get there for the 70s is Jaws, which is the unofficial, or I guess even technically the official first blockbuster. And then maybe Alien might have been a bit of a blockbuster as well. But aside from that, you're definitely absolutely right.
And I think that's a really good point. And like to my point about the rise of the blockbuster, there's no coincidence that you've named like the film in the 70s directed by Steven Spielberg, who is everything about the 80s that I love. Like you like his films. I think I cover a Spielberg film in my list, so I'll talk a lot more about his films a bit later on. But I think you see also the rise or the introduction of some special effects, which for a film nerd such as myself is pretty cool. So again, you go from these really grounded in reality movies where we just didn't have the technology and the scope to be able to tell certain stories. All of a sudden, these directors with so much scope and imagination, like George Lucas, Spielberg, I'm sure there's others in there as well, Ridley Scott, they can start to tell these insane stories that we just weren't capable of telling in the previous decade. So
yeah, sure.
And then I think final thing I'd say I've sort of come to understand in retrospectively is like I really feel that the 80s was the real birth of the global superstar. And
I was about to say, we haven't talked about it on the show yet, but it kind of is. You did have famous actors. You had like your John Waynes and your Gregory Pecks and that sort of thing. But the 80s feels like these are movie stars.
Yeah. And I mean, Tom Cruise, would be my prime example. I jotted down a few others here as well.
I'm guessing if I had to guess, Arnie is probably on there.
Yeah. So Arnie, Harrison Ford, Eddie Murphy. I mean,
Yeah.
Was there a bigger star on the planet than Eddie Murphy in like 1985? You know.
Well, definitely late 80s, early 90s, like following the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so you really just start to see these dynamic personalities just carry movies and franchises, and people, you know, you don't go to see you don't go to see a film because you like the film. You go see the latest film by a certain actor. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question of what the 80s mean to me.
No, that's good.
but yeah, I mean, I'd love to get your take on that. Is there anything that you think that I missed in terms of what the 80s means to all of us as film snobs?
Well, I guess I've talked about this probably just about in every episode we've talked about the 80s, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention now, and that's music. I think the 80s, the sound of the 80s is so distinct, more so than any other decade. And the 80s really introduced the idea of the movie soundtrack. In the 70s we had score. Every 70s and early we had score, but the 80s are like, hey, let's just whack a song on there. Like if you think, my favorite example is The Breakfast Club, where they obviously you've got Don't You Forget About Me, and the guy was like, I hate this song. I'm just gonna sing La 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 next. I don't want to write words to it. But they were like, okay, number one hit, and it's on to our movie. And if you go into like movies like Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, like the idea of the movie song. So I think music is a big part of the 80s. That, and like for some reason, and it'll come up later on, spoiler alert, vehicles. Like the 80s more than any other decade is like, we need to have the cool car, we need to have the cool spaceship. Like, and I know that there's some franchises that from the 80s that it started off in the 70s and stuff, but it feels like the 80s was a very big push for like, you need to have a car. There needs to be a cool car for them to drive. They need to have a cool whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to your point about soundtracks, which is a really great point, is there's also, we weren't as disgustingly self-aware as we are in 2022. Everything's got to be really meta, and I also, like, it translates to film soundtracks. Like, no other decade do you have songs that are literally like, they'll have the film title in the song kind of thing. It's just it was a glorious time. It was very bombastic is a word I would definitely use for the 80s. Very much excess.
And very shameless.
Yeah. And
but in the best possible way. Like, sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, you also really can't discuss 80s films and film culture without acknowledging that cocaine played a really big part in the industry at that time. And there are some wild films that got made, probably heavily influenced by cocaine.
And you also have, I think, the 80s kind of brings in the idea of like, hey, let's build a film around a comedian. You mentioned Eddie Murphy already, but like Steve Martin, Martin Short, like SNL had a big play in that as well. Like a lot of the Saturday Night Live, Chevy Chase, those kind of comedians and I'm having a blank. But those kind of comedic actors, like being like, hey, let's build a movie or even a franchise around this one guy.
All we need is a loose story structure, and then we're just going to let Bill Murray cook for 90 minutes,
Yeah. I mean, think about how many vacation films they made in the 80s. Like, I think there's like 3 of them. I could be wrong, but I think there's 3. It's just like, let's just whack Chevy Chase in front of, he's angry and his wife's sexy.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the recipe to any Chevy Chase film. Nice one.
Yeah, but no, great period of film. And I think that the unpretentiousness and the lack of self-awareness is still endearing to this day. I can go back and watch so many films that I've watched a million times, and there's something so simple about them. They were what they were. They weren't trying to subvert the form at all. They weren't trying to There was very little metaphor in the 80s. A thing was what you said it was.
Yeah. The other thing, and we talked about this briefly last episode with David and Liz, but the other thing about films in the 80s, more than any other decade, is they were like, let's just pitch something weird. Like, think about, like, I mean, Back to the Future is obviously the go-to because it's like, all right, so a teenage boy is friends with an old man. You don't need to know why. He goes back in time and he almost has sex with his mum. Okay, that's that's those are the key notes in Back to the Future. He's in a love triangle with his parents. Or like Police Academy. They're like, you know what? We can't get enough police, so we're just gonna be like, hey, are you a civilian? Give it a go. Like, it's just some of the most ridiculous concepts. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Let's go back in time through a phone booth so we can complete our history assignment. Weird Science. Let's make a girl in a lab. Like, it's just so dumb, but so wonderfully, gloriously dumb. Weekend at Bernie's. Like, let's not have a funeral. Let's just pretend he's alive. And I mean, I know obviously I'm picking on all the comedies and stuff, but like there's a zaniness, like a complete oddball attitude in the 80s that just wasn't seen anywhere else.
Yeah, and some of that stuff doesn't hold up to a much scrutiny when you think about our sort of the moral landscape that we hold in 2022, like Weird Science in particular, But
that's a tough one. I watched that a few years ago, and like, it's tough.
Yeah. But I would also be remiss not to mention the unbelievable GIF ability of 80s films. There's not a day that goes by where I'm not using a GIF from some. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Breakfast Club. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but when he's putting on no.
Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah, Anthony Michael Hall puts on those sunglasses. I use that very frequently.
Nice one. We were talking about John Hughes films on my episode when Tina interviewed me because she's not a John Hughes fan, and she was like, I want to know what your opinion is because I know she doesn't like him. And I was saying how, even though I don't love all of his films, he was very good at giving an earnest portrayal of what teenagers are like. Even if all the teenagers were played by people in their mid-20s, those characters were, for the most part, quite unlikable. And if you think about most teenagers, you're like, yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. Right. Like, they're so self-obsessed and self-involved, they don't realize how obnoxious they are. Yeah. And, that's me speaking as a former teenager. Like, I'm sure I was unbearable and obnoxious when I was a teenager as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I love John Hughes films, and I think it's like, just goes to show how good of a writer and director he is, that like someone like Ferris Bueller can be a hero to a generation of teenagers, and probably still is. I wouldn't know if young people come up and watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off whether they still find him iconic and something of a rebel legend. But at the same time, I can understand wanting to wipe that smirk off his face.
We talked about that because Tina had never seen Ferris Bueller when she was a kid, and I had. So whenever Tina tells me she wants to watch an 80s film, which, by the way, she doesn't. Most 80s films, she thinks she likes them, and then she actually doesn't like them. So I'll be really interested to see her list when she finally does it. But I was like, Ferris Bueller, it's great. You'll love it. It's so good. So I loved it as a kid. And we're watching it, and I'm getting into it, and I'm really digging the film. And like, it doesn't hold up as well for me because I'm starting to notice some of his character flaws that weren't so apparent when I was a kid. But I'm like, even though he's less likable than I remember, it's still a really good film. And I got to the end of it. I was like, what do you think? And she was like, as a teacher, he's just a really frustrating character. Yes, and I was like, fair enough. So, yeah, if she had seen it as a kid, I think she would have loved it. But because she didn't, she had to wait until she was an adult. He's a lot less likable to a parent and a teacher.
Yeah, I could imagine. But then, conversely, has there ever been a cooler moment than when he's singing Twist and Shout on a float going through Chicago?
So cool. I'll even give him Don Cachet. Like, also great. Also great. But then that's a film with another weird moment where he pretends to be Sloane's dad and then makes out with her in the front of the school. Like, just weird choices.
Yeah, very strange. I always found it really creepy the way he's like, come to daddy.
Yeah. And that's peak Broderick. Like, nothing against the guy. Like, he's done other things since, but I don't think I've liked him more than I have in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
No. And like, you know what? He's one of the few people I could forgive for just being like, you know what? I don't need to do anything else. Like playing one of the most iconic teenagers in film history, really.
Like now they need to do the like 40 years later sequel and see and like make him like did you ever watch The World's End, the Edgar Wright film?
Yeah, I did.
Like
yeah.
make him like the Simon Pegg character where he's still trying to live in his glory. He's like that's the film I want to see now.
I think that's more likely to be his mate. I can't think of his
Cameron,
yeah.
poor Cameron.
A very troubled young man. Well, it's funny how I think as well, the older you get, you start to ponder, is Cameron the main character of this film?
Yeah, definitely. He showed up in something recently, actually, the guy who plays Cameron. He was in a movie called Freaky with Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton? Oh, I'm not good with these new actors and actresses. I think it's Catherine Newton. And he played like the science teacher or whatever, the woodworking teacher, and he got killed. And I was like, hey, look, there's Cameron getting killed on screen.
Well, he plays a pretty big part in Succession, the HBO show.
I haven't watched Succession, but I only hear good things about it.
It's very, very good, and he's very funny in it.
And I've heard, but I do understand that every character is unlikable. So
yeah, they're all scumbags.
And that's got Brian Cox as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We were just talking about him before the show. We were talking about his unconvincing performance as a Greek man in Troy. So.
Yeah, classic.
Nice one. We should dig into your list. You told me normally you have a list. This time you got a bit of a spreadsheet. You got so much you want to talk about, which is great.
I was so excited to talk about some of these films. I had to put some dot points down.
I should put out a disclaimer. The audience knows this already. Historically, since doing the 80s episodes, I've not been great seeing a lot of them. The first episode, I'd seen 1 of 5 that someone talked about. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, look. Well, there's no indie films in particularly my top 5. I've got a whole bunch of honorable mentions, but I'm pretty certain that you've seen all mine.
I think I only had one indie film in my 80s group. My 80s list was pretty. I mean, they were a little bit left to center, but they were pretty mainstream. Like,
with the exception of one of mine, I'd imagine if you listed like the highest grossing films of the 80s, that's probably my top 5.
Oh, mine weren't. Yeah, my list wasn't that.
Yeah.
I think the highest grossing film on my list would have been either Blues Brothers or RoboCop. Anyway, I won't talk about them anymore just in case they show up on your list. I don't think they will, but they might. Hit me with number 5. What do we got?
All right. So my number 5 is Commando, which was released in 1985. Directed by a guy called Mark Lester, who, when I looked him up, I was surprised for creating such a masterpiece. I really didn't know any of his other films. And this, of course, stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ray Dawn Chong, who apparently is the daughter of Cheech and Chong.
Oh, Tommy Chong. Yep.
Tommy Chong, yeah. So who knew? And the Australian Vernon Wells, who plays the most baffling villain probably in the 80s. But this will be forever be my favorite Arnie film, and Arnie was a big part of my childhood growing up, and I really think this film catches him on the rise. I think it's just before, if I'm not mistaken, just before Terminator, which is when he kind of explodes, and then in the 90s he's probably one of the biggest movie stars on the planet with True Lies and
Jingle All the Way,
Eraser and Jingle All the Way, yeah, just all those kind of films. But I mean, if I looked, I actually made a note of the little synopsis on IMDb. A retired special forces colonel tries to save his daughter, who is abducted by his former subordinate. I mean, I'm just in from there. Say no more. So basically, Arnie has 24 hours to hunt down the people who took his daughter, which leads him, as all good 80s films should, to a South American island where his goal seems to be to kill everyone on sight.
Now, this is a flick you've been telling me to watch for about 10 years, and I still haven't watched it, but I definitely will get to it. But you rank this higher, just so because not one I hear a lot of people talk about. Like every now and then, an Arnie fan will reference a bit of a deep cut, but like you're ranking it higher than Terminator, you just mentioned, higher than Predator.
Yes.
higher than Conan.
Yes. Yeah, it's far superior to Conan.
I saw Conan for the first time this year and I loved it.
Yeah. I think I can be debated on Terminator and Predator, and I think that a lot of this has to do with. So I didn't see Predator till much later. It was just going back to our conversation about what the 80s meant to us. Predator just wasn't a film I had access to as a kid, so I didn't really see it. And T1, I mean, I've always been a T2 guy, so I've never really loved Terminator 1. So for me, this is it. This is Arnie at his absolute peak. I know. I'm so sorry, James.
No, I'm in the minority. I was talking to someone the other day. Like everyone loves T2, and everyone thinks T1's just not as good. I'm in the minority. I love T1. I think T2 is a bit bloated, but that's fine. Like I still like it. I just prefer T1, and I like Arnie as the villain. Like him as the hero, I prefer him as the villain.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about the Alien franchise. I prefer Alien to Aliens.
Yeah. But I mean, speaking of great 80s tropes, just a time limit for no reason at all. He's got like, I forget how many hours it is, but there's a time limit on it. And as if they're actually going to action something as the time ticks down. But it's got everything you'd want from an 80s action film. It's got killer one-liners.
I was going to ask about the one-liners. All I know is you're a funny guy.
Yeah.
Which is what you used to quote to me a lot.
Yeah, you're a funny guy. He murders a guy on a packed plane. He's sitting next to the guy who's kind of holding him prisoner, and he just elbows him and breaks his neck, and then puts a blanket over him. This is on a plane in daylight, and then he says to the air hostess or the stewardess, "Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired." So, what more could you ask for? And then, of course, the violence is that kind of it's not overly gruesome. I mean, it doesn't compare to something like a RoboCop or probably Predator, but it's just got that bombastic violence that, like, he'll toss a grenade, and then, like, you know, where I'm accustomed in this day and age to like ultra realistic. So a grenade just, when you see it in like a modern war film, it's more like a puff of dirt kind of thing. Whereas this, it's like people are literally doing like somersaults and flips and stuff like that. Yeah, 5 stars. What a great film. It's my favorite pure 80s action film. So yeah.
Yeah, you definitely sold me on it. So if what you're saying is to be believed, there's no other Arnie on your list. That's where it starts and finishes.
Well,
I don't want to spoil anything.
Honorables? No. That's the last Arnie appearance in my top 5.
On your top 5, yeah.
But there'll be some, yeah.
I was expecting Commander to show up. I am a little bit surprised it ranked so low. So these next 4, I got an idea of a couple are going to show up, but yeah, nice. It's interesting that you rank Commander so much higher than those other films. Again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But to rank higher than the classics, that's obviously a deep cut Arnie fan reference to throw Commando-wen there.
Yeah, and I just hope if I can spread the word, you know, and one person listens to this and checks out Commando, well, I've done my job.
If you achieve one thing tonight, it's so a little boy will go home and watch Commando. Nice one. What's 4?
Okay, number 4 is, the films just get bigger and bigger for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Number 4 is Star Wars: Return of the Jedi.
Interesting.
Now, this goes against form. I feel like Empire is generally seen as the best of the original trilogy, and I probably don't disagree that it's the superior film. It's just not my favorite film, and again, I'm going to reference the fact that I feel like films are really set in stone for me in terms of what you have access to, and to me, this was always the Star Wars film that I just couldn't wait to always. I'd watch this probably every weekend. So it was released in '83, which actually threw me. I actually thought this was released in the late '80s. And for me, massive, being the nerd that I am, one of the massive reasons that this is up there for me in terms of 80s films is the technology to actually be able to capture real lightsaber battles, real space battles. I mean, those like speed racer things they have on
the land speeders.
Yeah, the land speeders. That is just like such awesome visuals and tech. And the showdown between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor at the end, to me, is as good as it gets, as good as Star Wars gets.
Nice.
I don't know what. Yeah,
I think this is the Star Wars one I've seen the least. Definitely of the original trilogy, I've seen Empire the most, and then New Hope, and then this will be the least. But even out of all of them, with the exception of maybe the last two in the latest trilogy, I think Last Jedi I've seen once, and Rise of Skywalker I've seen once. Not for any other reason, I just haven't had a chance to go back to them. But this is why I think I've only seen like Return of the Jedi once, maybe twice. So my memory is a little bit foggy on this, but I know it's the one on Is it the one on Endor where you have the?
It is, yeah, and it's not the perfect film. I think that there's some pretty blatant merchandising going on.
Well, you know the story of the Ewoks, right? Or like this, as far as I understand, it could be just a myth, but the idea was that they didn't have enough. Now that I say it out loud, it sounds dumb and it can't be true. But they were like, there was an issue with the costuming, and they decided they made these short little Ewok costumes. They didn't have enough for Wookiees. It was meant to be on Kashyyyk originally, but that sounds dumb. Like now that I say that out loud, that can't be right.
Well, I mean, that's a preferable story to what I just assumed, which is just like, you know what, Star Wars sells toys, so let's give them toys.
Yeah. It just seems so dumb that they're like, oh yeah, sorry kids, we didn't have enough money for Wookiees this year, so we're doing Ewoks. But that's what I'd heard. I don't know if that's true or
not. And also the complete badassery of a fully formed Luke Skywalker Jedi. The moment he steps onto the screen on Tatooine wearing all black and takes out Boba Fett so easily, it's just like if he's not like the coolest character in 80s films, I don't know who is, James.
And is this the one? Is this the one with the Sarlacc pit where Boba Fett gets pushed down? And yeah, cool.
That's right. Yep.
As I said, it's been a little while since I've seen it, so I'm just trying to like put it all together in my head again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's not too much I can say about Return of the Jedi. I mean, it's a Star Wars film, so I know a lot of people will have seen it. But that's my number 4 in the 80s.
I like that you chose it because the go-to is Empire. And I didn't have a Star Wars film at all in my top 5 for the 80s, but a few people have, and everyone says Empire. So I'm glad that, like, if anything, you're like, you know what, like I do like Empire, but this one means more to me. So yeah, I'm glad that Return of the Jedi got a shout out.
Well, for my number 3, I'm going to subvert expectation again. It is 1989, so it just snuck in. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I think this one came up last time on the last episode. Tell me about Last Crusade. I've seen it. I know the movie, but tell me about why you like it so much.
A Spielberg masterpiece. I mean, I unabashedly love the Indiana Jones franchise. I mean, the 4th one wasn't very good, but even Temple of Doom, I think is a classic.
Yeah.
But this one is everything I want about an Indiana Jones film. Everything I want about like a adventure film. Like Nazis being the main enemy, hint of mysticism and religion in like the cup of Christ, and of course with Harrison Ford in this movie is Sean Connery playing his dad. I think you're right that like Raiders is generally considered, even though it's the first one is generally considered the best. But I actually think this is I think it's better written. I think like the villains are better as well.
Okay.
Well, I'd love to get your take on it, actually.
Well, I was talking about this on the last episode, and I only need one Indiana Jones film. That's how I feel, and that's Raiders. I think Raiders is a perfect movie. Also, as I was saying, it's one of the few movies where if the main character never showed up, the events would still occur as normal because he does nothing to that plot. But I love Raiders. I don't dislike Temple of Doom. I love all the cult stuff. I'm a big fan of movies about cults, as I've told you previously when we talked about Midsummer and things like that. But I find that Short Round is not a great character and isn't treated very well, so it doesn't age particularly well. And also the girl, and I can't remember her name at the moment, but all she really does is scream in that movie.
Yeah, she does scream indie a lot.
Yeah, like there's not a lot of character development there, so I feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Although I do love the Chinese restaurant scene. And I do love when they have to eat the snake or whatever it is.
Yeah, and there's some great eyeball soup.
Yeah, so there's some great moments in it. And Last Crusade, I'll give it another go because I was talking to David about this last time, and he was saying how much he enjoyed it. And I don't know what it was, but every time I've watched it, I just haven't enjoyed it as much. I just kind of find it a little bit. I don't like the relationship between Indy and his father.
Oh, James, do you know I've got a point written down here where I said I love the dynamic between Indy and his father. So we generally agree, but we couldn't be more opposite on this.
I haven't watched it in a good 10 years, so it's definitely due for a rewatch. And whenever I have an opinion about a film, particularly a negative one, and again, I don't dislike the film, it's just not one of my favorites, and someone presents to me the argument for it, I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll give it another watch and I'll try it again. So I'm not writing the film off. I'll give it another go. I love Raiders so much. I know it's the easy answer, but I often don't give the easy answer. I often do go with deep cut stuff. So I'm going to take this one and say that I prefer Raiders.
And this is in no way, by picking this as my third favorite and my favorite of the Indiana Jones, in no way saying that Raiders isn't an absolute classic. I don't know. There's just something I really love the setup work they do in that opening scene where it's a young Indiana Jones played by River Phoenix, and he gets he prevents that cross from being stolen. And his dad just doesn't give him the time of day. It's his dad that's obsessed with the Grail, and I love how that switches towards the end of the film, and it's his dad who says, "Just let it go, son."
Yeah.
And I also love the fact that they compete for the same love interest as well, Elsa, which makes me laugh. But it's got everything I love, which is Nazis as the enemy, flying on a blimp, a map, the Indiana Jones map, where instead you can clearly see that in the first one they didn't have the budget, so they just had a map with a red line going across it, and it works so well that they've done it again.
I love that. I love that part of that staple of those films. I just love how he has everything I want: Nazis, action, blimps.
Who doesn't like a Zeppelin?
I guess to me, it's well, you must have a very low tolerance for all films without blimps. You're the one who's been campaigning for blimps in Batman too, clearly.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a great pick, and I'm glad that again, just like with Return of the Jedi, it's good that someone's picking up on the other films and giving them a shout out. And look, you genuinely do have me now thinking, I should give it another go. I should rewatch it and see if my opinion changes.
You definitely should, but I should also say that that to me, Steven Spielberg is the 80s, and this, even though this film's really high, my third on the list, it's honestly, it could be a placeholder for any Spielberg film in the 80s. I jotted down a few here, but can you imagine any modern director? I mean, I'm going to say Christopher Nolan, I would say, has had a run similar to this, but in a 10-year period, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Temple of Doom, Last Crusade. I mean, that's a run and a half in one decade.
Pretty solid. And I don't even know if even Nolan can boast those, because whilst he's been quite successful, I just don't think that there's the same. Not that there's not the same adoration, because you do have diehard Nolan fans, but I feel like Spielberg just has a broader reach when it comes to audiences. Like those films, everyone's seen them. Where I couldn't say the same thing for Nolan, not because he's not as good a filmmaker. He just has a very niche approach.
Yeah, and
like
no,
you can make
I think
the
that's-
argument, and I know a lot of people online would disagree, but you can make a similar argument for Zack Snyder. Like if you go from 2004 to 2014, like you've got Dawn of the Dead, The Watchmen, Sucker Punch, which I love. I think Sucker Punch is hugely underrated. Man of Steel, like you've got all these great movies in there, but again, very divisive. Spielberg is one of the few directors, I think, even against someone like Scorsese, who's brilliant. Like you could do late 80s to late 90s with Scorsese and get early 90s, early 2000s and get a similar scale of pictures, but the reach just isn't the same. I don't think anyone is hitting an average like Spielberg in the 80s.
No, and it's truly incredible what he was able to achieve. Just, I mean, he is blockbuster filmmaking, and I mean, yeah, I'm sure someone would have done it, but like the films he's created and I mean, like I know I don't want to step on 90s films as well, but then like, you know, that all leads into like, you know, Jurassic Park, like in the 90s.
List.
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah. Like
maybe Tim Burton. You know, I've got mixed feelings on Tim Burton, but if you go late 80s to late 90s, you get Beetlejuice, Batman Returns, Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, you get quite a few in there. So maybe Tim Burton, although again, like quite a little bit more niche than Spielberg, but maybe he's got a similar run. But there aren't many, like not many that are hitting the averages that Spielberg in the 80s.
No, absolutely not. So as I said, like I know that's a specific film, but like it'd be remiss of me not to crowbar in all of his other films in the 80s as well. So that was like a little cheat. Shall I move to my second film?
Yeah, good. Number 2. We're flying through this.
Beverly Hills Cop, released in 1984.
Yep.
Directed by Martin Brest, who again, I don't know if Martin Brest did any other films, and I don't really care either. So this obviously stars Eddie Murphy, and to be honest, it's really just a vehicle for Eddie Murphy just to like, I think he was really blowing up on the comedy scene. I don't know when those comedy specials that he released came out, but there was a period of time when he was just the biggest star on the planet. Also starring Judge Reinhold, John Ashton, and Lisa L. Bucker. The first thing I have to point out about this film is I think it's probably got the best soundtrack of all time. It's got that Detroit funk and soul element. So like artists like Patti LaBelle, Glenn Frey, Pointer Sisters. So it's phenomenal. I actually own that on vinyl because that's how pretentious I am. But if you haven't heard the Beverly Hills soundtrack,
it's Crazy Frog.
Yeah, that's right. And as I said, this is basically just a vehicle for Eddie to just like do his thing. And I don't know if this was the first like fish out of water kind of like comedy conceit, but I think it's the first one that did it really well. I think taking the plot is he's a police officer in Detroit, and a friend of his gets murdered in Los Angeles, and so he takes sort of personal leave and goes out to LA to investigate on his own time, and he gets caught up in the crime web there, and obviously befriends a couple of Beverly Hills police officers as well. And it's done so well, the sort of juxtaposition of his Detroit roots and how sort of gritty his style of policing is compared to the sort of sunshine and rainbow sort of crimes that the Beverly Hills officers generally investigate. What else can I say about Beverly Hills Cop, James? I mean, it's just and also spawned a trilogy. The second of all, I also could have had the second one on here, which was directed by Tony Scott, which is one of my all-time favorite directors as well. And I think that's equally as good as this. So even though I'm saying Beverly Hills Cop, I'm going to be sneaky and crowbar in the second one to this as well.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
It's a great flick. Just so you know, Martin Brest had a great decade. After Beverly Hills Cop, he did Midnight Run, Scent of a Woman, and Meet Joe Black.
So he's definitely on the Al Pacino train, wasn't he?
Well, he hasn't made a film in 20 years. The last one he made was Geely with Ben Affleck and J-Lo.
Oh, jeez. Suppose someone had to die. Someone's career had to die after that movie.
I haven't seen Geely since it came out, and I remember watching it and being like, I think it's underrated. Yeah. Not underrated, but I think it's unfairly criticized. Like, it's not a terrible movie, but I haven't watched it in 20 years, so maybe I'm wrong. But I think everyone was just wanted to hate on Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, so any film with those two in it tanked. Jersey Girl was another one that tanked as well, but that's a great movie.
Well, I haven't seen Scent of a Woman in a long, long time, but I mean, I think Al Pacino won an Academy Award for that, playing a blind guy in that. So
yeah, I think you might be right. Beverly Hills. Also, Judge Reinhold. Like, I talked about him quite a bit on my list because he's in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is one of my favorite 80s films. That was on my list, and he's so charming and just plays befuddled so well.
Yes, he does.
Beverly Hills Cop is great. I haven't watched it in quite a while, but I wasn't allowed to watch when I was a kid because Eddie Murphy, too much swearing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any other Eddie Murphy picks, but he had a great run in the 80s. You got Trading Places and Coming to America. All great films.
Yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 2, 48 Hours. Have you seen that with Nick Nolte?
I haven't seen it, but it's on my list of my very long, ever-growing list of movies to watch.
Honestly, it's okay. What I would say, though, is just it's very, very troubling when you go back in 2000.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's really...
Well, even Eddie's stand-up going back now doesn't hold a lot of water because there's a lot of dated references and
this one's just flat out racist. So
sure,
I would So watch it at your own peril.
Yeah, but no, Beverly Hills Cop's a solid flick, and now. I noticed that there was an omission of number 3. Is number 3 the carnival one where the final act is him climbing up a Ferris wheel?
That is, and I mean, I omitted speaking about that, because it's the far inferior of the 3, but also it came out in the 90s. It, as quite often happens, the first 2 were really close together because they're obviously trying to recapture the hype and build on the first one. And the third one, I think there was a pretty big gap in between. And fun fact, the third one actually used to be my favorite of the 3 because going back to what I was talking about before, is like we always had it on video. So it's like, that's the one you would watch. So I was just like, why do I want to watch another Beverly Hills Cop when I've got the perfect movie on VHS? And now I'm a little bit older, you can actually see the flaws in it and just like things they used to try and get away with in the 90s, like that John Ashton didn't come back for the third one, and so they just kind of replaced him with Taggart Light,
was it a recast or was it a new character?
No, new character, but
at least they did that. I used to hate when they would recast, like they did it with Back to the Future 2. Like Crispin Glover didn't come back, so they used like a lookalike and stuff.
So yeah, would recommend that. I do think that stands the test of time. That one. I mean, some 80s films just won't stand up to the scrutiny of a modern film watcher's eye. But I do think that's good in every respect. So,
and that was the basis for my list. I was like, it's not even about what has nostalgia for me, although there were a couple of nostalgic choices. It was like, what can I watch today? I'm like, hasn't aged, still works. And Beverly Hills Cop is absolutely one of those flicks. It's so funny. The action's great. Story's really good, like a really good detective story in there as well. It's a solid watch.
Yeah. Now you know me pretty well, James. What do you think my number 1 is? Well,
to me, it's got to be a Tom Cruise film. I'm thinking it's got to be either Top Gun or Cocktail or I don't think Risky Business would be a number 1. I'm really leaning towards Top Gun. That's where I'm going with it, but I could be way off the mark there.
You are 100% correct, my friend. To proof that either our bond is stronger than I thought, or I'm really predictable. So those are the two options.
It could be a bit of both. Well, it'll definitely disappoint you to know that I've still never seen Top Gun.
Yeah, that makes me sick, actually.
I've never been playing with the boys.
So
I can make a deep cuts reference. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, but I think that goes to why. I mean, I'll talk a lot about Top Gun, I'm sure, but like, I think that like that just goes to show why it's at the top of my list, and I think a lot of people would have it, if not the top, then close to the top of their top list of 80s films, is because like you haven't even seen it, and I bet you could watch it, sit down and watch it, and recognize probably 50% of the dialogue.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't there a bit where he sings "You've Lost That Loving Feeling"? Like,
Yes,
you never close. Yeah.
Mm.
They used to play that on the Video Easy like hits reel.
Yeah. But of course, I couldn't have anyone else apart from Tom Cruise is my number one. I do think that you could have permission to call the police if I named Cocktail the best film of the 80s. I mean, I love it and it's funny, but it's that would really be subverting the form, wouldn't it?
I just feel like we've had like long discussions about Cocktail. We've like waxed rhapsodic over it, and so I was like, maybe it's Cocktail. But Top Gun was like, well, that seems like the most obvious answer, and not in predictability. Just like that's a clear cut one. But you've thrown me a Return of the Jedi today. You've thrown me a Last Crusade. So maybe you're going to throw me a Cocktail. I don't know.
Yeah. Coughlin's Laws. That's Brian Brown character. So Top Gun, released in 1986, which is just shockingly so long ago now, considering we just got a sequel this year. Directed by the great Tony Scott. I don't know if we've really covered any of the Scotts, Ridley or Tony.
We've talked about Ridley a little bit. I like Ridley Scott quite a bit. As I mentioned before, I love Alien. So much more than Aliens, but I haven't rewatched Aliens in 15 years, so I actually picked it up recently to give it another go. But love Ridley Scott. Gladiator, obviously another one. But even his Robin Hood, I didn't mind. But Tony, I think, is better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if I think about directors who, I mean, I probably couldn't say that he hits the heights of like a Michael Mann or Spielberg or Nolan. Like, I'm sure there's films of those people I like more, but Tony Scott for me has the most number of great films. I didn't phrase that very well, but like, you just have so many great films, and he has a style. Like, I really believe you can tell a Tony Scott film while you're watching it. So Top Gun, starring Tom Cruise, of course, Kelly McGillis, the great Val Kilmer, and Anthony Edwards as Goose. Now, it wouldn't be right to start anywhere else except for the fact that this was produced by the dynamic duo of Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson.
That is a winning team.
Now, we mentioned cocaine before. I genuinely believed that there was a third partner in their production team, and it was a little white bag of cocaine. I feel like so many of their films were just like I was listening to another podcast, so I'm lifting this from that, but it's such a good point that Tony Scott directed Beverly Hills Cop 2, and that was a Bruckheimer and Simpson movie as well, and it's like in no other era could there be like a heist of like a racetrack that ends in a chase where Eddie Murphy pulls up to the Playboy Mansion in a cement truck and hands the keys over to Chris Rock, who's playing the bellboy. So it's just like, yeah, what a time. But some of their other production credits, Beverly Hills Cop 2, obviously I just mentioned, The Rock, Days of Thunder, Bad Boys, definitely one of the better better production teams, I think.
Bruckheimer, I think, had a very similar career. Oh, actually, I should say, who's the guy? Who's the Transformers guy? Michael Bay. Michael Bay,
Yeah.
I think, was gunning for a Bruckheimer-like career. And I actually prefer Michael Bay as a producer than a director. I think he did Pain and Gain, I think he directed that one. That was quite good. But I think he's tried to have a similar trajectory to Bruckheimer and just not quite met. Although he did direct The Rock. But yeah, and Tony Scott, obviously no slouch either. We're just talking about how great he is. Like obviously Beverly Hills Cop 2, and Top Gun. Sorry, my brain is shutting down for the night clearly. But True Romance, Domino, which I thought was hugely underrated. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but I love Domino. Spy Game, Enemy of the State, Crimson Tide, to like Last Boy Scout. Like this just goes on and on and on. Like he just made all these like really unique, like they're big in the 90s.
Man on Fire.
Man on Fire, Unstoppable, Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, Deja Vu. Like he did a lot with Denzel actually as well. Because there's at least 3 in there. Yeah. Solid director.
Love Tony. But Top Gun is something that I would classify as the ultimate 80s blockbuster. So when I think of everything that the 80s represents, Top Gun is it. So you've just got just such a simple premise. You don't really need a geopolitical enemy. You just need a nameless, faceless, like enemy MiGs flying around, and the conflict between Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer is perfect. It has all the tropes that I look for in an 80s film, which is like like a race against the clock to take out those MiGs at the end. A celebration on the deck of the ship at the end where like the two like enemies sort of become friends and there's like a grudging respect. I think grudging respect is something that was started as a trope in the 80s and then perfected in the 90s with Cool Runnings, where the teams that previously made fun of the Jamaican team gave them the slow clap as they were walking off the race. And I actually, in doing a bit of research on Top Gun, maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't, but apparently it resulted in a massive increase in applications to the Navy.
Yeah,
such was the cultural impact.
Such a strong recruitment advertisement for the armed forces, definitely.
Also, would be remiss not to shout out the soundtrack, which I think is one of the great soundtracks. I mean, is there a more iconic soundtrack song than Highway to the Danger Zone?
It's pretty strong.
Yeah. And then also I think Berlin did that song Take My Breath Away, which was
Take My Breath Away, Playing with the Boys, the karaoke song I was just talking before. Like it's strong. It's definitely a strong soundtrack.
Yeah. And I think as well in a classic 80s way, it's very unashamedly homoerotic.
Yep.
And it doesn't pull any punches about that. It doesn't it's not asking for you to judge it. It's just the culture that it presents. And I think it's fantastic.
I think that's very that was very prevalent in the 80s as well. Like my go-to one when I think of like either unintentional homoeroticism or very intentional but unashamedly is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. It's a really weird one. Like people are like, what? Because what happens is Freddy Krueger, instead of trying to like haunt the dreams of a young teenage girl, which is what he normally did, is he kind of possesses a young teenage boy and just does some really weird stuff where he's like dancing to pop music while he's cleaning his room and like getting very close with young men in pools and stuff. It's very strange. But that's just another trope of the 80s, yeah. Oh, did I lose you? Oh, no, anyway, cool.
No, have you got me?
Yeah. I thought the recording dropped out for a second, but we're all systems are go.
Yeah, but I just think so many iconic characters and catchphrases. I mean, to the point where they've permeated. They've gone so far beyond movie culture. Like, I mean, if someone says, "I feel the need for speed," do people even know that's from Top Gun anymore? It's just that ubiquitous that it's just a saying we have in the world.
Well, people probably think it's from the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna drop that. I was like, is Need for Speed from Top Gun? And it absolutely is.
Yeah. You can be my wingman anytime. It's something I've said to many people, much to their annoyance, I'm sure. Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to speak about Top Gun.
It's definitely been a film on my mind, obviously, with the release of Maverick. So it is something that I will be getting around to watching at some point. I just haven't watched it. But everyone loves it. I've never met a person who doesn't love Top Gun. Like, if they've seen it, they're like, it's great.
Yeah.
Quintessential viewing for 80s lovers.
Yeah, I think one of its great, why it's got such mass appeal is it really doesn't ask you many questions. You know, you won't be left. There's not really much moral ambiguity. You know, like, it's really clear cut who they're fighting, and everyone becomes chummy at the end. And I just think it's got everything that you want and wraps everything up in a pretty nice, neat bow. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. And of course, we've got the belated sequel this year, which is just unbelievable. I actually can't believe it was as good as it was. Like, it had no right to be that good.
What I keep hearing, I literally keep hearing that from everyone. I've got friends who haven't seen the first one who went and saw the new one 2 or 3 times in the cinemas.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And it's like, I can't tell you why it's so good. I mean, it looks fantastic. It's incredible the way they've actually, I guess, got the cameras now in the cockpits of these planes, and you can tell it's the actors flying them, or probably not controlling them. They're just up there. But
except maybe Tom. Tom's probably flying himself.
Yeah, he is. He is just insane with the amount of things that he does for his movies.
I think the thing I wasn't. I'm going to skin the game, so I wasn't worried about it. But I remember when I watched the trailer, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem fun at all. And that first film, I get a lot of fun vibes. So my concern was, are they going to be able to match the tone, or is it going to be more like a gritty reboot where, like, you know, everyone's unhappy?
Well, I think they do match the tone to an extent, but I thought that, like, you can take it almost felt like Top Gun 2 came at the perfect time, almost as like an allegory for Tom Cruise in the movie industry. So he's a young man in Top Gun. So in Top Gun Maverick, which is set 30 odd years later, he's at the end of his career. You know, he's an older pilot kind of thing. And it felt like the most perfect sort of allegory for what Tom Cruise is to movies right now. And it's just this unyielding, relentless pursuit of like a viewer experience, and like providing something new and pushing boundaries. And, you know, it was refreshing to see something do so well that wasn't, I mean, it's IP based filmmaking because it's obviously a sequel, but it felt really practical, and it felt like a real antidote to some of the disposable stuff that's come out. So there's a bit going on in the second film. I think it's a really interesting time for that film to come out, and I just think really interesting as to what it's going to do to films in general. And sorry, this is a bit off topic from 80s.
No, that's okay. That's what we're here for, is to talk.
But you know, it'd be really interesting to see what the downstream effect of that film is. You know, are we going to see a return of sort of like your sort of like one-off blockbuster films back to away from streaming services, or even away from, you know, limited series now? You know, so many films that would be your medium-sized kind of like action blockbuster just get made into a limited series. So like, I'm thinking
Cobra Kai.
Yeah, like the new Chris Pratt show on Amazon, The Terminal List. That like, you know, 5 or 10 years ago is definitely a film. And there's a Jack Reacher TV show, which is obviously a move away from film. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if this kind of brings brings a different type of filmmaking back.
I feel like what you're getting at is that we're going to get the long-awaited Commando sequel finally.
I'll pay. I'll crowdfund it myself if there's a chance.
I think they are doing a Conan sequel. I keep hearing rumors that King Conan is coming, which is what everyone wants because it's old Arnie playing old Conan, like just being grizzled.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I feel like Arnie is due for, like, ever since he sort of left politics and kind of kicked off his movie career again. He hasn't really crossed back over into being what he was, and of course we're talking about an older man now. But I still think there's something there for him to reclaim.
I really liked, and this film's getting almost 10 years old at this point, but I really liked Maggie, which was a zombie film he did.
Yeah.
I liked. I'm sure people will disagree with me, but I liked Terminator Genesis. I haven't seen Dark Fate yet, but I liked Genesis. So I think there is more for him to do. He can do some more interesting roles. Do a 30 years later sequel of Jingle All the Way, and now he's going to get a present for his grandson.
This time it's more jingly or something. That's the tagline. Well, I've got a few honorable mentions. Would you like me to reel them off?
Yeah, let's get through it. I mean, part of me is like, because you did bring up Tom Cruise, and we've talked about the idea of celebrity, and part of me is like, do we open up the conversation that is movie star versus actor? That might go for another hour.
Yeah, I'm sure we could wax lyrical on that for an hour. But all right, so in no particular order, I'm just going to reel through them. Stop me if there's anything you want to comment on.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lethal Weapon,
great film.
Shane Black, who was just like the master of like that kind of 80s action. Was this the first buddy cop kind of comedy?
Yeah, I wonder. I'm trying to think if
that
there's
questions.
more. But
probably 48 Hours is. Sorry to cut you off. 48 Hours is probably the first of like what I would term a modern buddy cop, because it's pairing like Nick Nolte, who's like a grizzled old cop, with a young comedian in Eddie Murphy. But Lethal Weapon is definitely perfecting that kind of formula.
Because previously you had more lone detectives, like Dirty Harry is kind of like a one-man show, that sort of thing. I'm trying to think if there are any other buddy cop films before that, but I mean there probably are. But like Lethal Weapon definitely sets the tone.
Yeah, and launches Mel Gibson.
Yeah, he's great, but his accent is all over the place in that film.
Yes, and but one of the all-time great mullets ever recorded on film.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the first one where he's up trying to like talk the suicide jumper down, and their hands are cuffed together, and then when they jump, they're very clearly not cuffed together. It's a great little moment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great film. I love Lethal Weapon. I actually like all of the Lethal Weapon films. I think 4, although 4 is horrendously racist if you go back and watch it now, there are some great moments in 4.
Is 4 the one with Jet Li?
Yeah.
4 is great. I must say, I haven't watched it recently enough to pick up on some of those elements. I probably watched it more as a kid, but
definitely Mel and Danny use accents that aren't their own. Like it's pretty rough.
And also, I mean, speaking of just like amazing things that you can get away with in the 80s, Lethal Weapon culminates in like a fight at Danny Glover's house. And
in the rain, and the cops are like, they got to settle it themselves.
Yeah, it turned into a fucking octagon. You know what I mean? It's like, just so unrealistic, but so funny, and just so unaware.
You do have that great scene though where he's hooked up to the battery and he's like being hung by the chains. Like that's great. Like and he like chases the car in bare feet. It's a great flick. Yeah, it's solid.
Classic. We already touched on it, but The Breakfast Club, which is the first John Hughes in my honorable mentions, just classic 80s teenager film. And it's like, this is the kind of film where I look back and think, wouldn't have been the worst thing to be a teenager in the 80s, you know, even though like even detention seemed like it would be pretty fun.
Although that film is depressing. Like they're definitely when they get into it all, like it's I don't know how much fun that detention is. They definitely like open up some deep-seated wounds.
Well, yeah, I mean that's true. Maybe I'm more thinking of Emilio Estevez dancing like an absolute
So you
spastic.
are not alone.
Yeah. Color of Money, which is a Scorsese film I talked about when we did our top 5 Scorsese films a few months ago.
Yeah.
Classic pool hall film starring Tom Cruise and Paul Newman. Fatal Attraction.
I've never seen Fatal Attraction, but I've always wanted to.
Oh, it's so great. Glenn Close is phenomenal in that film. It is just unbelievable. Michael Douglas. I can't. What the director's name escapes me. Paul. Was it Vander something?
Let me have a look. I'll look it up. Michael Douglas, who, yeah, I mean, he's had a long storied career, but in the 80s and most of the 90s, just basically was in films where he was the most desirable man getting caught into weird sexual trysts.
Just like, a wealthy, yeah, like always a wealthy person caught in these erotic kind of like situations.
Yeah, like Basic Instinct, The Game. The Game is less so, but still very much.
Yeah,
that.
Well, The Game he plays just a wealthy person, but he's just caught up in a game rather than like a scandal.
Oh, but there is like some weird sex stuff in there as well. It's a lot tamer because it's a tasteful film made by oh my goodness, I've forgotten his name now. Fight Club 7.
Yeah,
help me out. Fincher, that's it.
David Fincher.
Adrian Lin directed Fatal Attraction.
Oh, Adrian Lin. Okay, sorry. I thought it was the same guy who directed. You just said the name of it before. Basic Instinct.
But well, I can tell you what he did direct. He directed like he's got a type. He directed 9.5 Weeks. Fatal Attraction, Indecent Proposal, Lolita, and Unfaithful. So he's definitely got a type.
But yeah, absolutely wonderful. Like, and I mean, you just don't see erotic thrillers anymore. I mean, I think that new Ben Affleck film that came onto one of the streaming services that also had Ana de Armas in it. That was about as close as you get to an erotic thriller these days. It's just not a genre you really have.
I think it died out in the mid-2000s. Like, there's probably a handful left. Unfaithful is one of the ones I can think of.
But basically, with Fatal Attraction, so he has a wife and a young child, and they go away, and he ends up sleeping with Glenn Close's character. And she turns out to just be a real psycho.
So it's Knock Knock. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
Yeah.
Also with Ana de Armas.
Yes. Yeah. But there's some pretty horrific stuff in that film. But it's definitely a really great 80s film. And I thought I had to represent an erotic thriller on there. Twins, starring Arnie again and Danny DeVito. This is just so heartwarming, this film.
It's a classic. It's so good. I always just think of you named your cat Julius after me.
Yeah.
And when they're trying to when he's trying to like stop the alarm going off in the car, he just lifts it up to a certain angle and the alarm stops.
Yeah. And I also love like they make a point of just how different they are physically, and yet they like piss with the same action, you know. Like the same when they're in the toilets and they're like doing the same thing while they're peeing, and it's just like, why would you piss the same but you look completely different? Like, why would that be transferred? Like that DNA be transferred? Classic.
I do hope they do, like, because they were planning on doing a sequel. They were talking about it for about 15 years, Triplets. And the third was meant to be Eddie Murphy. I hope they still go ahead with it, because Danny DeVito is doing some of the best work of his career right now. So I'd be really happy to get those guys together again.
I would pay to see that. I'd
And
pay someone about $15 to $20 to go in and see that.
And DeVito in his earlier career played very kind of angry, obnoxious, but now he just plays crazy, and that's what I want. I want Frank Reynolds from It's Always Sunny as the twin. Nice one. That's a good pick.
Cocktail, of course.
There we go.
Tom Cruise, Brian Brown. I've spoken about it a lot over our podcasting history. We already touched on it. Just quintessential 80s Tom Cruise vehicle, this one. Gets a little bit real towards the back end of the film.
Yeah.
He gets a girl pregnant and it's a bit crazy. But
that is a staple of 80s. I was talking about this on my episode. 80s films weren't afraid to go dark. There are two wonderful teen films from the 80s. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is one, and the other one's The Last American Virgin, which centers around teen pregnancy and teen abortion. It happened a lot in 80s films. So the fact that someone got pregnant towards the end of the Cocktail doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and Cocktail was a perfect representation of what people's values were in America in the 80s. It was this Ronald Reagan era of just everyone just wants to be rich. That's what success was. In Cocktail, that's what his goals are, just how to be rich, and that's just perfectly acceptable. So
that's his story arc. Just want to be rich.
Next on my honorable mentions is a Michael Mann film called Manhunter.
This is the Hannibal film.
It is. So it's actually, I think came out in the late 80s, maybe 87, 88, and I actually had Hannibal Lecter before we got Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, and this isn't Anthony Hopkins either. This is a different actor.
No, it's Brian Cox.
Oh, he makes another return.
Yeah.
I have not seen Manhunter, but I've always wanted to.
It's so underrated. I mean, it's not rated. I don't think many people really have heard of this film. Obviously, I could talk about it all day because I love Michael Mann films so much. But it's got the dude who then reprised his role as a crime scene investigator in the original CSI. I can't think of his name. Maybe you can look that up for me while I'm talking about the film. That dude who was in the original CSI. But essentially follows he's a investigator who kind of the type we've seen a number of times in the Hannibal TV show is kind of uses empathy to get inside the heads of a serial killer and start to understand them, and that obviously takes its toll on him as he gets sort of deeper and deeper into this guy's web. And at the same time, and sorry, it's not Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter he's already been captured in this film, and he's kind of messing with the guy's head from inside jail. So
it's Red Dragon. That's what it is. Because it's got the Tooth Fairy, and the Tooth Fairy was the villain in Red Dragon, played by Ray Fiennes. William Peterson is the guy you're thinking of.
Yes, William Peterson. Thank you.
It's a solid cast: Joan Allen, Brian Cox, Dennis Farina, Stephen Lang, Tom Noonan. That's a great cast.
Yeah, and it's just it's just so classic Michael Mann. There's a scene when so Joan Allen plays this blind photo processor or something like that. She's a printer or something like that. And Noonan, who plays the Tooth Fairy, takes her on this date, and they end up petting this tiger, and it's really visceral and crazy. So that's a strong recommendation for me. That would almost make it into my top 5 80s films. So if anyone hasn't seen Manhunter, definitely watch. Next on my honorable mentions is Beverly Hills Cop 2, which we talked about a fair bit in relation to the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Classic Tony Scott film. The Shining.
Oh, what a film. I love The Shining.
Yeah. I almost forgot that this is an 80s film because this film feels timeless to me. You could have told me it was made in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and I would have been yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
It's my favorite Kubrick. And I know it seems like the go-to, but it's perfect. And I know that people including Stephen King, think it's an unfaithful adaptation. But it's so well done.
Yeah. No, it's perfection. I think we've talked about it on the pod before, and like, has there been a better, like, holy shit moment when Shelley Duvall, is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
She like goes in and like reads what he's been writing, and it just says over and over again. What does it say? It's like,
all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
and it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble here.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much.
Good. And like those twin girls are still terrifying.
Yes.
The blood in the elevator, like it's just so well done.
Oh, and just like, what an incredible idea for a horror film.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to go be the caretakers of an empty hotel over winter. Like, that's just an incredible premise.
The old woman in the tub, like, it's just.
Oh yeah.
I love the book, and the book is different, but the movie is perfection. I just. Oh, pardon me. I was just thinking about, there's a moment in Ready Player One where they have to go to the Overlook Hotel. And that was pretty much the only part of that movie I really enjoyed. Ready Player One is not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not my kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when they went into the horror section, I was like, oh, I love this. And they got away with so much in that film and referenced so much of The Shining. I was shocked how much they were able to do. But The Shining is brilliant.
You know, I didn't see the sequel that came out a couple of years ago with Ewan McGregor.
Oh, Doctor Sleep?
Yeah.
I've seen it the one time. I really enjoyed the book. It's good. It's just not The Shining.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the book is a wonderful sequel because it's Danny Torrance 30 years later, kind of processing the weirdness that happened in his childhood.
Yeah.
And then finding other children. And there's another girl who kind of has The Shining now as well, and him trying to save her. That's what the idea is. And there's like a religious cult, again, why I liked it so much, who have found that they can actually absorb the power of The Shining and feed off it to make them like immortals. So it's really different from the first one. And I think the movie did quite a good job. Trying to recreate the story. But like for Stephen King's work, and this is why I like The Shining so much, his books are so dense, it's so hard to adapt them faithfully. And The Shining was just kind of like, Kubrick was like, look, I'm taking what I like, I'm leaving the rest behind, and we're going to make it work. And it does. It really does work in a way that so many other Stephen King adaptations haven't quite hit the mark. It's still worth watching.
I also, in such a kind of serious film, I low-key find it hilarious that Scatman Crothers travels so far to try and save Danny and then just gets axed like as soon as he arrives.
Which is a departure from the book. In the book, he survives.
Ah, okay. So yeah, classic film, and to be honest, we could do a whole podcast on that.
It's so good.
Next on my list is Empire Strikes Back. Of course. How could it not be on there? It's a classic film. It's it's perfection. Thank you for that film. Raiders of the Lost Ark, we've already talked about as well. It's incredible. Die Hard.
Yes.
The original absolutely. Die Hard.
Die Hard, which I forgot in my episode, and then while I was wrapping up, I was like, oh, honorable mention Die Hard. I can't believe I didn't mention Die Hard. Die
Hard I love because it kind of, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't note the date of that. I think it came towards the end of the 80s, and it started to kind of like subvert a little bit of what our action hero was, because like obviously a lot of my favorite films, we're talking about like Arnie, we're talking about these super soldiers, you know. Sly Stallone probably had a few films where it was massively roided up, but now Die Hard was refreshing because it was just this everyday beat cop who got caught in a situation, and I really, really love Die Hard. The original is still the best in my opinion.
It's great.
And then my final honorable mention is, we already talked about it a little bit, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
So good.
John Hughes again. I just love John Hughes' style and his aesthetic and everything about his film. So that sort of rounds out my list.
That is a solid list. And we had some repeats, but if I think about your top five, I don't think anyone's mentioned the five that you mentioned, um, which is
That's
not a
good.
bit.
That's good.
That's not a bad effort. Like
Yeah.
Ghostbusters has been mentioned a lot. Beetlejuice has been mentioned a lot. Empire Strikes Back has been mentioned a lot. Raiders has been mentioned a lot. You've just made little twists and turns. You managed to.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think any of your films have been mentioned before.
Well,
Is a
that's
solid
good.
list.
That's good. Hopefully, it's going. I mean, there's not really much of a chance you're going to talk about an '80s film that people haven't heard of, but hopefully,
Yeah.
it's kind of well. Maybe Commando might be the only one that people are like, oh, I haven't really seen that.
That's a deep cut. Yeah, like I'm true to form and true to the title of the show. I did get a bit snobby. Like I think my five. Most people would have heard a couple of them, but I guarantee most people wouldn't have seen a lot of the ones that I mentioned, because I can't help but be a snob. But I had to like mention like deep cuts and stuff. But yeah, no, yours a good list. And you made me want to watch all the ones that I hadn't seen in a while. I was like, yeah, I want to go back to Return of the Jedi. I want to go back to Last Crusade. I want to finally watch Commando and Top Gun after all these years. Beverly Hills Cop I saw in the last few years, so I don't need to run back to that one, but still a good movie.
You know, the great thing, probably something we didn't talk about, just in what 80s films mean to us and what they represent. We all, 80s was really the rise of the trilogy as a storytelling device as well, which is fantastic if they get it right, because like Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, to name a few. I mean, Beverly Hills Cop, we obviously just
even the
about.
rise of the sequel, like not even the trilogy, like it's the first time we really did. I think with the exception might be Dirty Harry. I think there might have been some sequels in the 70s, but most films didn't start getting sequels until
like
the 80s.
Godfather would be the only other one that was probably a sequel that was good. So yeah. So where to next? Do you dare attempt top 5 70s, or is that just too far back?
Well, we're going to do 90s. We'll do 10s. So we'll do 2000s. We'll do 2010s. Halloween is getting closer. Like I know it is the first week of August, so October's not that far away. So we will be doing some horror stuff as well. I might do 70s, or I might just do classics, and then people can just pick anything pre-1980s, and that way they don't have to be beholden.
That's a great idea, actually. Oh, yeah. I'm going to volunteer myself for that one. I've got a lot of things to say.
I had a guest on a while ago, Maddie, who's a friend of Tina's, and most of her, I hadn't seen anything on her list. Like she went really obscure, and most of them were like pre-50s, or pre-60s. Like that was all old films. And that was another reason why I was like, right, we need to do 80s, 90s, 2000s, so that way people can talk about modern films also. But I love that she brought, a discussion of an era that hadn't been really mentioned previously. The only exception as well was David, Tina's brother-in-law, and I guess my brother-in-law as well, where he didn't stick to the format. He's like, I can't do 5. It's too difficult. So I'm going to do one movie from every decade I was born. So he did the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So he's the only other person to kind of go pre-80s. But we will do classics or something like that at some point. There's a lot that we can do, because then we can go into territory like, what's the movie that scared you the most? Like, what are the 5 movies that made you laugh the most? Like, there's so much we can play with in the arena, which is really good. But before we wrap up, you have to do the 1980s rapid fire questions.
Yes.
We did rapid fire questions last time, and now we're doing the 80s ones. And they cover a lot of stuff we've talked about already, including the intro. But we'll see how you go. You haven't prepared for this, but I think you'll be okay. So Nick Owen, which movie is the definitive 80s movie for you?
Look, I can't go past Top Gun.
Yeah.
I can elaborate, but no, I just think it has Top Gun has everything I look for and want to see in a film from that era. Amazing dynamics between the main characters, like cheesy one-liners, like great action, like a simple plot. And yeah, I mean, I know we just spoke about it as well, but yeah, Top Gun for me.
Nice one. I'm not surprised by that at all. Which 80s movie for you has the best theme song and or best soundtrack?
Beverly Hills Cop.
Nice. Excellent.
Beverly Hills Cop, yep, definitely.
That synth line is so strong.
Oh, it is. And I think as well, I mean, like that like Axel F, I think that's what the that
Yeah.
like that's pretty commonly known, but I think some of like the funk stuff on there is even better. So like there's a song on there called Stir It Up, which is just phenomenal. So yeah, that's definitely the number one soundtrack for me.
Nice one. And then I need to know, and I already know the answer to this one, which actor or actress defined the 80s for you?
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that was my answer as well, by the way. I was
Yeah.
like, when I think of the 80s, he's the face of the 80s to me. Even though he's had one of the longest careers of any actor from the 80s, it all comes back to the 80s for me.
Well, I think it's just a testament to like how his longevity that I think he's the most iconic 80s actor to me, but I think his best period is probably like in the 90s. So
yeah.
Okay. So did you have an answer for soundtrack?
Oh, my soundtrack. So I answered all these when I was interviewed, but my soundtrack I think was Blues Brothers. Even though it's not an 80s sounding soundtrack, like every song on that soundtrack is great. Like there's only 11 songs on the soundtrack, or the one on the recording that was released, and every single one of them is fantastic. Like they're so very groove driven, very bluesy, very a lot of funk in there as well. Very, very cool. All right, Nick, which is the best 80s vehicle or mode of transport?
And we're talking 80s here.
80s. Any car, boat, elevator, plane.
So I can't use my beloved blimp from Indiana Jones, which is set in the 40s.
Oh no, from an 80s film. So yeah.
No. I was just joking. Geez, great question, and I'll try and make it as rapid fire as I can because there's so many. I'm going to refer to my number 5 enlisting Commando.
Interesting.
He flies in on, I don't know the technical term for this. He flies on one of those little biplanes that lands on water. And that's how he gets onto the island where he goes and kills everyone. And when I was a kid, that was like the sickest thing I'd ever seen in my life. So I'm going to pick that plane.
Didn't they also use that in Raiders? Doesn't he arrive at the start of Raiders in a biplane as well?
No, yeah, that's how he escapes from the jungle at the start of Raiders. Yeah, that's right. So dual use.
That's the first time a plane has come up. Everyone has gone DeLorean, I think. Everyone's gone either DeLorean or Ghostbusters car. That's what everyone's gone.
I can see that. To be honest, like I would have also gone like in Beverly Hills Cop 2. He's got a really sick Ferrari. And I would also take Cameron's dad's
I was waiting
car.
for that. Cameron's dad's car, yeah. Nice one. And then the last one, and probably the most convoluted of the rapid fire questions. Last time I asked you which movie should they never ever remake. This time what I want to know is which 80s film should we remake?
Oh, geez, great question, James. I mean, I can't really say Top Gun because they've just done that. Who should they remake? I'd love to see a modern take on something like Fatal Attraction. So I'm going to go Fatal Attraction. I'd love to see like an erotic thriller that just goes a bit off the deep end and gets a bit crazy. I think there's like, I'd especially love to see it with someone like some actors and actresses that are like well and truly attached to like really important franchises. Like imagine seeing Chris Evans and like who else is, I don't know, just someone who just would be just completely like a left turn in their career doing something like that.
Well,
so yeah,
that is the next part of the question is now cast it. So who are we going?
All right, I'm going to go America's ass, Captain America.
Now, how old is Michael Douglas in the original one? Is he in like his 40s? I suppose Chris Evans almost 40.
He'd be 40s, like early 40s kind of thing.
Okay, Chris Evans. I like it. I like that it's not the pick because my original thought was like, oh, like Ben Affleck. But well, the reason I didn't do that is because he's literally a star in one of those kinds of movies. So I just think that's a bit like. Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I didn't think of it. I only think of Gone Girl, which is a little bit similar. But I know I like Chris Evans. And who is the fatal attractive person?
Great question.
Like, do you go like a Margot Robbie, or is that too on the nose?
No, Margot's a great choice, but I think I'm going to put Margot in as his like loyal wife.
Oh, that's a good pick, because then you're like, who is the one that like?
I'm trying to think who I would love to see go off the deep end and go crazy. Maybe like a Scarlett Johansson. I think she's got the range and the sort of like I could see it.
And you don't see Scarlett get to do that very often.
No.
So she's a good pick. Reuniting her with Chris, and you know they've got chemistry as well. That's a good pick. I was trying to think who else. I was like, maybe like a Gal Gadot, but I don't know whether.
I don't know if she has the range to do a deranged.
Yeah, and that's not a criticism of her. She does what she does very well, but I'm just trying to think if there's someone else who can do crazy. Like if we were doing this 15, 20 years ago, you go like Helena Bonham Carter.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think
or you could mix it up and make it an older woman. You could do that. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
even though
no, definitely. I think after seeing Doctor Strange, I would say Elizabeth Olsen could do a deranged killer.
Oh, yeah, she definitely could. That's a good pick as well.
Yeah.
We're not really leaving the Marvel universe, but
No, I don't know why they're all just Marvel people.
Except for Margot Robbie.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty good. I like that. I like that cast. I like that remake. That's really good.
I love that. It's a great question, man. Good question.
I've already got the 90s one figured out as well.
Yeah.
I have to start planning ahead when we get into the next phase. Excellent. Well, that's it. You survived the rapid fire yet again.
Barely.
I think you are the guest who's appeared on the show more than anyone else. I think you might have the most episodes under your belt at this point. So you're setting the bar high.
I'm always happy to be back, man. No, thanks for having me on to talk 80s films. Like, I think you can kind of, I don't know, I think something I've been thinking about a lot actually is like that sense that like they don't make them like they used to. And I think there's a part of that is cultural, and like the landscape changes and what people's taste changes and stuff. So, you know, films are always evolving, but I do think there's something to nostalgia and the films that you grow up with that are just always there from the time you start to absorb them into, you know, adulthood. Like it's just like a warm blanket, you know, those films that I've covered today, despite how probably violent they all are, I can just put them on and just feel safe and at home, and just that warm, fuzzy feeling. And you know, I hope I don't lose that. And you know, like I love like all films, and like but there's just something about those ones you grew up with.
And I think like on top of adding to that, I think there's a very large parental influence. Like the 80s films that I grew up on, and granted, most of the films on my list weren't from my childhood, the ones I discovered later. But the ones that, the honorable mentions, or the ones that were from my childhood, were like, because my dad was like, I like this, so you will like this.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, is, you know, like, again, we didn't, as a child, you don't have a freedom of choice. You kind of watch what you're given. And we didn't have streaming. We didn't have those things. It was like, look, there are 4 videos at the video store. Like, this is what you can get.
Yeah.
But it is very much a warm blanket. The good thing is that even though they're not making them the same as they used to, I am finding that feeling in the cinema more and more. Like there are, and you know, we talk about the Marvel films a lot, and love them or hate them, good or bad, I think they are providing that kind of same kind of warm blanket entertainment. It's like, oh, this is familiar. I know that, like, even if it's the worst Marvel film, it's still going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of how I feel about those childhood films as well. Nice one. Ending on a poignant note. That is going to do it for this week's episode. Of course, a big thank you to Nick for returning yet again. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I always look forward to having a chat with you about movies and all that sort of good stuff. Please follow along on Instagram. I was a teenage film snob with underscores between every single word. You can like the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor FM. Give us a review, but only if it's 5 stars, and make sure the comments are nice. Otherwise, keep your damn mouth shut. I will be back next week. But until then, please remember, I was a teenage film snob, but I'm trying to be better. We'll see you then.